Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. For those of you not familiar, my name is Tyresha Monet, and today we'll be talking about David Koresh and the Branch Davidians. So before we even jump into any of that, I just want to give a quick little intro. Hi, how y'all doing? I know it's been a good 2-3 years since I was last here. Your girl looks a little bit different. She's a little bit older, a little bit more wiser, a little bit more mature. No, not really. I'm probably less mature. I've regressed. But anyway, I just missed talking to myself on the internet, talking about shit that I like learning about, like researching. Hopefully I'll be more consistent. I can't make any promises because in the last video I said I wasn't gonna make any promises, and I didn't. And obviously I took a 2-3 year hiatus, but we back and we gonna be popping. All right, so let's just get right into it because I'm tired of talking about this. So if you don't know who David Koresh is, he was a prominent cult leader back in the 80s. Okay, he was part of the Branch Davidians, obviously. David Koresh was actually born under the name Vernon Wayne Howell, and he was born August 17th, 1959 in Houston, Texas, which is where I'm from. So he was a fellow Houstonian. His mom's name was Bunny Clark, and she was a single mother. David Koresh's father really wasn't around too much. He didn't really do well in school. He was not very well liked or very popular. He was dyslexic, so he had a hard time learning. And a lot of the kids, were mean to him, called him all types of names. You know how kids are, basically, just being assholes. Much of his childhood was lonely. He spent a lot of time by himself because he didn't really have any friends. They weren't really trying to play with him, definitely didn't like him. So he spent a lot of time by himself. A lot of the time that he spent alone, he spent it studying the Bible. And he actually memorized the entire New Testament by the age of 12. So as he got older, he really came into his faith and decided that he was going to be a born-again Christian and joined the South Baptist Church. But eventually he became part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which was his mother's denomination. So a lot of congregants of the Seventh-day Adventist Church did not like Koresh too much. They found him very overbearing because he typically tried to convert the congregants to his interpretations and his beliefs of the religion. Now, while he was part of this church, he became sexually attracted to the pastor's 12-year-old daughter. He was eventually expelled from the church after he told the pastor that God wanted Koresh to take the child as his wife. We get signs of pedophilia early on from this man, okay? He is using God to justify liking little girls, and we don't like that. I don't care what religion you are. It doesn't matter to me. If you like little girls, there's no justification for that. If you like little boys, there's no justification for that either. Pedophilia is pedophilia, and it's disgusting. And I also would like to note that he did end up marrying a 14-year-old girl. Her name was Rachel Jones, and he did end up having 2 children with her named Cyrus and Star. And when he eventually joined the Branch Davidians, which we'll talk more in depth in the future, he was presumed to have 12 wives, and a lot of them were underage. After being removed to the church, he did spend some time in Los Angeles trying to make it as a rock star, which obviously didn't happen. He eventually moved to Waco, Texas in 1981 to the Mount Carmel compound, where he joined the Branch Davidians, which was a splinter group of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So at the time of his arrival, the current leader was Lois Roden. She was the wife and widow of the original founder, Benjamin Roden, who had passed away prior to Koresh's arrival at the compound. So Lois really encouraged Koresh's love for music. She encouraged Koresh to play the guitar and sing during their daily Bible sessions. Now, it was speculated that Lois and Koresh were having a sexual relationship with one another. Koresh claimed that God had told him to bear a child with Lois and that child would be considered the chosen one, which Lois was in her 60s at the time of his arrival. So biologically, there's no way you would have had a child with her unless y'all got a surrogate or something. But this was the 80s, so I doubt they were even going to go down that route. So in 1984, this is when he married Rachel, the 14-year-old wife that I mentioned a little while ago. And in this year, he had also began teaching his own interpretations of the Bible in lectures called The Serpent's Root. These lectures were especially not well received with George Roden, who was the son of Lois Roden. Lois is the current leader. And he was the one who was actually expected to take over the Branch Davidians once she passed. So there was definitely a power struggle between George and Koresh. They definitely did not mix well. Both of each other wanted power and leadership over the Branch Davidians. And this all came to a head when George accused Koresh of setting fire to an administrative building. Koresh claimed that the fire happened due to a judgment from God. So I don't really know if that means he set the fire or not. He did not deny setting the fire nor confess that he did it, but he said that it was God who did it. So my opinion, he probably did set that fucking fire. So George eventually did win leadership of the sect after he drove Koresh and some of his followers out of the compound at gunpoint. So Koresh and his followers retreated to Palestine, Texas, where they lived under pretty harsh conditions. They were staying in tents, staying in RVs. Wasn't a lot of, running water, things of that nature. Sorry, my dog's making a slight appearance. So during this time, he actually made several mission trips to different places to try to recruit new followers. And he visited places such as California, the UK, and Australia. He also visited Israel, and while he was there, he claimed to have had a vision revealing he was the modern day reincarnation of the prophet Cyrus, who liberated the Jews from Babylon. So because he had this vision, he felt it was his rightful place to take leadership of the Branch Davidians, and he returned to Mount Carmel in 1987, heavily armed in order to take over the sect. And I would like to note that Lois Roden died a year prior in 1986, so that would have officially made George Roden the leader during that time. So in 1987, the year after, that is when David Koresh came through. Heavily armed, might I add. Him and his followers came through with guns ablazing, okay? And the weapons included 5 .233 caliber semi-automatic rifles, 2 .22 caliber rifles, and 2 12-gauge shotguns. Around the same time, George actually exhumed a body from the community cemetery, and Koresh was a witness to this. He saw it. So George claimed that he was only moving the cemetery, but Koresh claimed that George issued a challenge to resurrect the body, and whoever was successful in doing so would be the sect's new leader. So Koresh actually went to authorities to try to get George arrested for disturbing a corpse, but the police told Koresh that he would need photographic proof. So Koresh and his followers went back to the compound in order to try to get this photographic proof. And of course, George is not letting that go down, okay, without a fight. So basically a gunfight broke out, and George ended up getting shot and sustained minor injuries. Koresh was actually put on trial for attempted murder because of this, along with the followers who were with him that night. But he received a mistrial in the case and was let go, as well as his followers. They were also acquitted. In 1989, George was actually arrested for murdering a man named Wayman De La Dare by shooting him and then hitting him in the head with an axe. So he was the definition of overkill. He was put on trial and was found guilty by reasons of insanity and spent the rest of his life in a psych ward until he passed away in the year of 1998. With George out of the way, David Koresh officially became the leader of the Branch Davidians. And in the year 1990, this is when he officially changed his name from Vernon Wayne Howell to David Koresh. So during all of the events that happened, he was still known as Vernon. But after George had already been put away in jail and he won leadership of the Branch Davidians, this is when he started going by David Koresh. Both his new first name and last name were biblical references to 2 different individuals who are found in the Bible. His first name was a reference to King David. King David was the 3rd king of Israel, and he was the one who beat Goliath. His last name, Koresh, was a reference to Cyrus the Great, with Koresh being the biblical name for Cyrus. And Cyrus the Great was the king of Persia, and he was the one who freed the Jews from Babylon. Koresh professed himself as a spiritual descendant who was carrying out a divine mission here on earth, as a lot of these cult leaders tend to believe about themselves. and make other people believe about them too. So some of his teachings included the practice of having spiritual weddings, where he was able to have multiple wives who varied in ages. He was said to have as many as 20 wives, some of who were fucking children. The youngest wife was reported to be around 10 years old. And he fathered at least 12 children with these different wives, which is absolutely disgusting to me. Like, anybody who claims to be anything, like, that's your right, but leave them children out of it. So as the leader, David Koresh claimed he had cracked the code of the 7 seals in the book of Revelations, which predicted events leading up to the apocalypse. He told followers that the Lord willed Davidians to build an army of God and proceeded to have them stockpiling weapons. The members of the Branch Davidians started to frequent gun shows in order to collect weapons for the impending apocalypse. There have been claims from previous Davidians that said weapons weren't only for defense, but they were to generate revenue for the compound, which I can definitely believe, because how are they getting things rolling without money? You know, you need a source of income. Okay, you got to make money to live. So I can definitely see them trading guns to make a living off of. The stockpiling of weapons eventually caught the attention of the ATF, which is the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And they obtained a search warrant for the Mount Carmel compound. The ATF actually believed that the Branch Davidians were violating federal gun laws, with claims they were converting semi-automatic rifles to automatic, which is illegal, and making live grenades, which is, also illegal. On February 28th of 1993, the ATF showed up at the Mount Carmel compound in order to serve the search warrants, look inside, get the weapons, probably make a few arrests, but it did not go down how they expected it to. The ATF claims that the Branch Davidians were unwilling to cooperate, and the day ended with a 4-hour gunfight that resulted in 10 deaths. 6 of Koresh's followers and 4 ATF agents were killed that day. Koresh himself was actually shot during the initial standoff. And no one knows who really started the fight first, because both sides accused the other one of shooting first. Let me know how y'all feel about this, but I personally think the ATF agents shot first. I feel like it is very much in America's nature to shoot first, ask questions later. And I really do think they probably came in very hostile, very demanding. While legally the Branch Davidians do have to cooperate, I don't think they made it a safe space to do so. These people they have a certain mentality about things. Koresh has, instilled in their mind about an impending apocalypse, an impending war, and then a good amount of ATF agents show up at their door, guns a-blazing. They're not going to be willing to cooperate. So the siege for Mount Carmel ended up lasting a total of 51 days. So this was a long time. It was going on for almost 2 months. Several agents communicated with Koresh via telephone in order to work out a negotiation situation so they can get as many people out of the compound as possible. And during negotiations, Koresh actually agreed to let 2 children go for every time they played his message over the media. Even in the midst of all this, he really just wanted his word to get out about how he believed in God and what his message was. And at one point, David Koresh had actually agreed to surrender himself and let all his followers go. But he ended up changing his mind later on after claiming that God had told him to wait. So during the first half of the siege, a total of 35 people were released from the compound, including 21 children. And these would be the only Branch Davidians let go. So the siege eventually ended April 19th of 1993. U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno approved recommendations to use force for a final advance to get them out of the compound. The FBI launched a tank and tear gas into Mount Carmel, and hours later, the compound ended up catching on fire. This resulted in the death of 76 Branch Davidians, with 25 of those deaths being children. Koresh was among those who were found dead, and he had a gunshot wound to the head, which is suspected to be self-inflicted. His wife and 2 children also died in the Mount Carmel compound in the fire that day, as did a lot of other Branch Davidians. I really do feel like the United States government handled this very poorly, extremely poorly. I feel like there was an excessive use of force. I don't think they should have came in the way that they did. You know, these people are already on edge. They have a certain belief system implanted in their mind, and they're going off a guy who's, you know, talking about stockpiling weapons for an impending apocalypse. You know, you have to have a certain type of delicacy to the situation, and I feel like they handled it terribly. I don't think that many people had to die that day. Cults are very interesting to me, how they think and how they work and the overall indoctrination of people. I just want to sit down with someone who is in a cult or was from a cult and just ask, like, how did you come to believe this, you know? But anyway, I'm kind of rambling because that is the end of the case. The Branch Davidians ended up, you know, going up in flames, essentially. The Mount Carmel compound was raided by the United States government. Let me know what you think about the case. Do you think the ATF started it, or do you think the Branch Davidians were the first ones to shoot? Who started the siege of Mount Carmel? That's it for me, guys. Hope you're all having a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.